Welcome to Real Foot Forward, a West Tennessee podcast from Discovery Park of America in Union City, Tennessee. Today's episode is brought to you by ATA.
Thank you, Zach. And welcome everybody to Real Foot Forward, a West Tennessee podcast where we explore the history, the people, and the culture of our home in West Tennessee. I'm your host, Scott Williams. Okay, Zach, before I introduce today's very special guests, what is something you discovered this week at Discovery Park of America?
Well, Scott, we have had our Real Bodies exhibit here for a couple months now, and I don't think I've mentioned that as a discovery yet, so I felt the need to. And one of the most fascinating things for me in there is the tower of boxed fans, like in the early part of the exhibit. At first, I thought it was like there to help keep the bodies cool for some reason, but it's actually there to tell you that the volume of air each of us breathes each day can fill approximately 7 hot air balloons.
Yep. And it also, to me, was a great visual to communicate something in a museum exhibit. You know, hats off to the folks at the exhibit company that did this one. And great comments that I was just looking at a bunch today that we've gotten in from people who've seen it and loved it. And it'll be here through September 1st. So people need to make plans to come and see it.
That's right.
So our guest today is a very special guy, Dr. Nassar Nassar. He's the founder and CEO of Savant Learning Systems, Inc. and Virtual Academy. He's an entrepreneurial leader, an advocate for business in rural communities, and one of my favorite things, a global traveler. So we're going to hear some of those things. Welcome, Nassar.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate the invite and love and honored to be here with you.
So you've been a fan of Discovery Park for a while, so we're really grateful for all you do for us. Take us back a little bit to the beginning. Where did little Nassar start out?
Yeah, little Nassar. I've not been called that in a while. So my name is Nassar Nassar. I was born in Amman, Jordan. Decided to explore higher education in a different country altogether. Supported and encouraged by my dad. Growing up, loved America, the idea of everything that America stood for, read all kinds of different cool biographies about our founding fathers and the story of the American nation. So I decided to come to school here.
So a lot of people know, a lot of people are going to be curious. America's a big country.
Yeah.
So what made you select Northwest Tennessee?
Well, there's actually two real reasons for that. So my mom was not too fond of the idea of sending her 17-year-old to a completely different continent with, I'm talking about 40 years ago, all kinds of wild things that were going on in New York and everywhere else in there. So my dad basically found the small town of Martin, Tennessee, that was a dry county at the time. We could even get beer past midnight. And he just thought that could actually keep me safe until I figured out how to speak English. The real other reason was, many people don't know this or don't remember this, but University of Tennessee at Martin had one of the top 10 intensive English programs in the nation. So I came up here to go to school, learn how to speak English before I figured out exactly what university I was going to attend. And I just fell in love with this town, community. And I remember, Scott, when I was going to school here, how friendly the people were. And I do remember, maybe confidently now I can say, but probably arrogantly back then, I remember thinking to myself that, when I grow up and I am an important guy and I have my own company, I'm going to come back to this community because I really, really like these people. So I remember that about maybe, I want to say about 15, 16 years ago when my main office was in Nashville, Tennessee. So I came back up here and basically purchased the very first building downtown Martin, 311, the one that I'm in right now. And it seemed like more buildings were coming open and the company started growing, needed more technical support folks, needed more programmers, content designers. And so I just continued to buy more buildings and refurnish and add more to the team in the big city of Martin.
So what was when you first got to Martin and first started going to UT Martin, what was the biggest different environmentally from the way you had grown up, and what were sort of the surprises that you had to encounter?
I think this podcast is supposed to be 1 hour long, Scott. It's I tell you, there's so many different stories that I can go with. You got to keep in mind, I mean, I was born and grew up in Amman, Jordan. Amman, Jordan is about 7, 8 million people. Uh, Very old. How old you would say? Downtown, like in the center of town, there is a Roman amphitheater, like a real Roman amphitheater. Uh, Not too far from there, there's a citadel. Those are Jordan was a part of the Roman Empire, so these are the kind of you talk about environment, and Amman sits on 8 mountains. So there's a whole lot of difference between where I grew up and the big city of Martin. So, but I'll tell you, it's kind of a surprise to me. I mean, honestly, I came up here thinking that I was going to be here about a quarter until I uh, was sufficient in my English to be able to attend college or university level. I was lucky enough to I completed that in 1 quarter, but I mean, I just love the town, Scott, and I've always maintained some level of residency here, and we call it home. This is where we are. This is where my wife and I and kids are from, and we just going to stay here. So,
There had to have been a fascination among some of the students at UT Martin who encountered you, and you were the first person from Jordan they ever met and probably will ever meet. I'm sure you had some interesting experiences with them.
yeah, I mean, going to school in a different country, a different language, different culture. I didn't know anybody when I came up here. It's got to be kind of like, the same kind of experience that you would have going to college, because it is a different environment. You're stepping up. The environment is much more inclusive. You do have people from all around the country, the state, and some of the other parts of the world. But to me, it was just a natural high is the best way that I can describe it. I mean, I loved every minute of it. I met some of my best friends that are still friends to this day. My college suite mate ended up going to joining the military and was a captain in military intelligence who was responsible for the American mission to NATO. I married a Dutch girl, and I traveled quite often to Europe, hung out with him, and ran all over the place. He was from Murray, Kentucky at the time. So it's a great experience. I would do it again, say the least.
So, what area did you ultimately end up focusing on majoring in? What was it? Just business?
Well, honestly, at the beginning, I was pre-med,
Hmm.
so I wanted to be a doctor, uh, but maybe I shouldn't confess this. So back then, Scott, we didn't have all of these automated systems. So the night before registration, some folks may remember this. You had to kind of get in line, and there were cards, and you had to get your
Oh,
advisor and everybody to stamp. Zach has no idea.
no, no, these young people. And if you screwed it up, you had to start all over again and find another professor and knock on their office door and get permission. And it was a nightmare.
Yeah, so I partied maybe a little longer than I should have the night before, so I was not on time. So by the time that I got to all of the classes that I was supposed to take, they were all closed, if you remember that. So I went back to my advisor and confessed my sin, and he will just go register for anything that you can, and hopefully other people will drop out. So, but entirely by accident, I ended up really enrolling in business classes, and I just loved it. I mean, it's just one of those things that I discovered that's a natural fit for me, and got lucky, honestly, in that regard. So, but I loved it. I mean, I had marketing, economics. I can speak that language much better than biology and chemistry and all of the other good subjects, of course, for my medical doctor friends.
Now, what did your dad do?
My dad was kind of an entrepreneur, but he also worked in the government. Jordan is a relatively young country, so at the beginning he, was one of the founding members of the Intelligence Community, I would say. Um, so
So
they
you
own,
grew up around the language of business, so
yes,
you
sir.
sort of acclimated to that pretty naturally, I assume.
Yes, sir. Yes,
So what obviously fast forward, you're going to end up being the CEO of Savant Learning Systems. What was the pathway to getting from UT Martin to the CEO chair you're sitting in now?
I traveled through the same path that just about every college graduate goes through. When you get out of college, you think that you're going to be offered a position as a VP or some kind of a top executive director position right away, and then making six figures back in the days, and everything's going to be great. But that's not exactly how it happens. I worked in the restaurant business. I, you know, done a bunch of different things that did not pan out to be exactly what I wanted to. I realized after a while that I needed to kind of go back to school and get my MBA and then finish my doctorate. I did that, and did some consulting for a while, and then was successful relatively enough to the point where I could actually have the time to start thinking about what do I want to do when I grow up? What kind of field, what kind of business do I want to be in? And I chose education very simply because I firmly believe, Scott, that at the core of everything that's strong in the world today really has been is ignorance. We are ignorant of certain medical discoveries that led to the death or early premature death of many people. We are ignorant of certain sciences, communications, physics that held us back. We're ignorant of cultures and different, uh, way that other people think. So at the core of everything that is wrong, again, to me, is ignorance. So I wanted to get into education because education is the cure. It is the best, most efficient way to really remedy that. Modifying, adjusting people's paradigms by discovering and learning more things is about as good a field as we can get into. I mean, that's the essence. That's my fascination. That's my love and admiration for your organization. Discovery Park is all about that. I think that you guys have discovered that that is the spine. That's the actual core of. If we fix that, then everything else is secondary. I mean, we discovered antibiotics, saved millions and millions, probably billions of lives. It's education. It's got to be effective. It's got to be the right way of doing that. I think Thomas Jefferson is the one of my favorite quotes. He said something to the effect that if a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be.
Hmm.
So, from a micro level of as individuals, the more that I know, the more scientific, the more that I know that it's researched and vetted, all the way to a national level. I mean, if we don't have the knowledge and understand what it is, we wouldn't have democracy. It's not something that, again, this is the bottom line, is that I don't think that anybody can say it better. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, it expects what never was and never will be. So that's the bottom line to me. I mean, I chose education, uh, hoping that we can make the biggest possible difference there is.
So did you
Yep.
decide you were going to do education? Did you take the academia route? Did you become a college professor? Was that the goal?
Yeah, not exactly. Somewhere along the way, I will claim maybe a little bit of arrogance on this part. So when I got my PhD, I wanted to prove a new training style that is more applicable, that is more effective essentially in what's called the transfer rate. Uh, on average, about 10 to 12% of training is transferred to the workplace. I thought that there's plenty of opportunities to improve that. So, I'll make a long story short, my dissertation was focused on that. I did consulting for a while, and then I discovered that virtual, you got to keep at the time. Online education, online training was still a question mark. People didn't really know if it's a fashion or fad. Didn't know if it's going to stick around. But we now know, I mean, we're communicating through the virtual realm. The bandwidth, many other advancements on technological levels got to the point where it is now. So I remember when I bought virtualacademy.com and virtualcampus.com. I won't say his name. Tommy Liggins was my CFO, and he was questioning like, "What the heck are we doing, paying this much money for that?" It's one of those situations where I think you could tell by then, about 20 years ago now, that this is the direction that is going to be a wide open field because of the advancements of technology, because of the bandwidth and everything else that goes along with that. So I just stuck with that, and honestly, the idea was to do a little bit of training. Ended up writing a book for McGraw-Hill on organizational development. Met a bunch of different nerdy textbook authors, and then got the idea at the beginning to try to come up with a better way of developing an MBA program. So worked with Bethel University here, used to be Bethel College back in the days, and then we kind of built an MBA program together, and I'd say within about 14 months became the number one enrollment-wise in the state of Tennessee. So I knew that there is potential for that, and we continue to grow that. Virtual Academy came a little later. So my background, again, is in education, in business education, so I can talk shop, economics, marketing, business, and so on. But after we succeeded in developing an MBA and bachelor's degrees and undergrad in business, the overwhelming data and request was in criminal justice. Well, I didn't know enough, about that. So, make a long story short, we got in that field, contracted different folks that were top textbook authors in the nation at the time, and then launched a criminal justice program. And then to try to help law enforcement folks, I discovered that we could develop some training that had to be certified, and we have to go through a process to make sure that it is credible and accredited. But we developed some content at the beginning and went to post in Nashville. And when they looked at the quality of the product, the training that we had developed, they allowed about 80% of the training required by each law enforcement officer in Tennessee to be completed through Virtual Academy, which is a big deal. So I don't know if you know, but law enforcement in Tennessee, it varies from one state to the other, are required to complete 40 hours minimum. Some of them mandated. Some of them are, just general education to stay a commissioned officer. So we developed some training and then try to provide as much as we could, and it just took off. Really, the Virtual Academy was just a discovery. I had no idea that it was going to be a company. I thought it was going to be a small division that would support the criminal justice programs that we had. But within a few years, it really took off. So right now, I think we have over 100,000 full-time officers, depending on Virtual Academy, to complete the training in about 36 states, maybe 37 by now.
So 20 or so years ago, the business model for the textbook industry was to charge poor, struggling little college students like me. Notice I said 20 years ago. It's been a little more than that. But we would pay $75, $80, $125 for a textbook that the teacher required that you couldn't pass without buying it, and then you could resell it for $10, at the school. And so what was the reception like when you come in wanting to kind of change the business model? Was there resistance?
Um, Let me answer macro, if you allow me, and I promise I'll come back to you and give you a very specific answer on that. By the way, Zach, when he's talking about $125, back then it's like $500 now, so it's a lot of money. There are three factors that affect whether a company survives or thrives. Number one is cash flow, as you can imagine. If you don't have cash, it doesn't really matter if you got a Bentley or a Pinto. It's a chicken coop. It ain't going nowhere. Number two, having the wrong people in key positions. The third, which quite often is ignored or is not looked at, is what's called industry trends. I remember, go back in time and think about how we used to watch movies before Netflix and all of that stuff. Well, industry trends changed, and then all of those blockbusters were pretty much out of business almost overnight. I think the publishing company at the time were doing a significant amount of soul searching. They were not, they were kind of stuck. So I do remember having significant, challenging conversations with the top publishing companies that were trying to merge and trying to figure out what to do. But their business model was exactly what you just said. I remember the first meeting that we had, I think it was McGraw-Hill in Chicago, and the very first question they asked after I really pitched them the idea of giving us access to their electronic ebooks, and then we will pay them. We don't need the books. We will cover everything. We'll do the stores. We will do all the, confirmation, verifications, everything else that they needed. But they were not interested in that. It took me going over there and meeting with them for 2-3 hours. And the first question I remember was, okay, so how much you want for the company? Because they were trying to look for alternatives. That came a long way. I mean, right now there are a lot less publishing companies, a lot less authors, and the business model had significantly shifted. It's the same thing for us, really. The idea of being able to find the top textbook authors to record a very specific style approach that I think I was comfortable saying that I proved more effective during my dissertation. Basically, get the top textbook authors that have written these books to communicate in a clear and persuasive manner what they've written, and then be able to capture that. I mean, the idea, imagine you have to get up in the morning, take a shower, go to class, find a seat, sit down, and try to find essentially a comfortable seat where, I know their audience are not going to see this, but essentially be able to look and listen to the professor giving her or his same spiel that they have done for years. Well, to me, technology was there. We could just capture that, hire content development, graphic design illustrators to maximize that content absorption level, and then make it available 24/7 from wherever. So virtual campus or virtual academy at its core negates the limitations of time and space. So you don't have to get up 8 o'clock to be at a 9 o'clock class Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, like we had to in the back in the day.
Yeah.
You could just literally get and walk. You could literally, view that at any time. And the same lecture. I mean, we update the content every 2 or 3 years, depending on the actual course itself. But the idea is, as a professor, I didn't really change much. The lecture that I gave on whether it's econ or organizational development. So what we thought we would do is we would capture that and develop it and really make it available from anywhere at any time. That seemed to have worked. So
it definitely did. So you've got your finger on the pulse of what's going on with virtual education. What do you see 10 years from now? What will it be like when we have our podcast episode in 10 years? What will have taken place?
Yeah. Um, so, Scott, I'm going to show our age here. I suspect that if you had taken any business class back in college, undergrad anyway, strategic planning back then was 7 years. I'd say at the graduate level, it ended up being like 5 years. Not too long after that, 3 years. So a strategic plan right now is 1 year. Uh,
Mhm.
I cannot begin to tell you what it's going to be in 10 years. I know that there's a significant amount of advancement that AI will be super disruptive in that. We will find our way. I do not think that AI is a negative or a bad thing. I think just like anything else in there, we will find our way and then figure out how to best utilize that.
Yeah,
Uh,
Zach will tell you that in our field, we use AI daily.
Yep.
It is like my little friend that sits here next to me and but we use it. We have to use wisdom. We have to, we have to be able to be smart enough to know how to use it properly.
yes, sir. Absolutely. I agree on that. I mean, uh, I'm going back to being a professor here again, so forgive me for keep going back to the macro picture before I zoom in on this. AI to me is Internet 2.0. I mean, we can't imagine. I remember, my wife and I taking the kids going to Florida with a van, and then you got all of these maps sprawled out everywhere. Right now, if you go like 5 minutes without internet, then you're lost. You literally don't know how to communicate. So anyway, make a long story short, I think the basics of any economy, you got three different industries. You got the agriculture, you get the manufacturing, and then the service. If you look at United States 1850, what percentage of Americans were in the agriculture business? Zach, what do you think? How many?
In what year? What?
1850. Go back,
Oh,
quite 200 years, but back in the 1800s.
I mean, I feel like I'm gonna go high here, but 75%.
Very close, very close. 68, 70%.
Mm.
Okay. What is it today? A year ago, 10 years ago,
It's got to be below 50.
it's 2.3%.
Wow.
That's insane, isn't it? That's
Mhm.
hard to believe, especially
Well,
when you live here and we're just so inundated with the message of agriculture
yep,
that you forget.
yep. The 2.3%, 2 or 3%, let's say, not only feed the rest of Americans, but pretty much the rest of the world. How? How did we get to this one point? Efficiency. Efficiency, two ways. One, automation. A John Deere tractor does the work of, God, hundreds of farmers back then. Okay. Of course, the second part was the manufacturing. We went through migration to the city because with less labor being needed on the farm, we had more and more, folks going to the city, and in the industrial revolution and all of that stuff. Right now, another pop quiz. What's the percentage of Americans that work in the manufacturing sector, Zach?
Hmm.
Guess.
25.
It's about half that.
Wow.
Yeah. The rest of us are in the service or knowledge work. This is the point that I'm getting to.
Hmm.
If you remember, what is it, Little House on the Prairies? If
Yep.
you remember, there was one episode, most people are going to say, what the heck is he talking about? Way back then, an early American kind of episode that showed that the teacher and the preacher were the same, and they had like the third, fourth, fifth grade all at the basement of a church. I've been told that back then the small town barber was also the surgeon. Why? Because he had more experience cutting people, so he wasn't afraid of the blood, more or less. Fast forward to now, I mean, education, law enforcement, entertainment, healthcare. About 80% of our jobs are in this realm. An average house used to be a 350, 400 square feet with, dirt floor and so on. And now the average is over 2,000 square feet. Service requires human intervention. So as a professor, I can't be teaching here and in New York at the same time. Knowledge sector is where AI is going to thrive. I had to kind of throw this entire background to give you my real answers right now, Scott. I think AI, the fears that come with AIs are natural because most people are saying that, okay, we're going to lose our jobs. And it's true. AI is going to make a bunch of different mundane, boring jobs obsolete. But in the long run, it's going to allow us to be more advanced. There are countries around the world right now that still operate where 50, 60% of their population are in the farming, 30, 40% in the manufacturing, and then don't really have the best military, law enforcement, and so on. So we want to kind of work with this AI to continue to be advanced. The Chinese are big time ahead of us on that. We definitely got to continue to be involved in it. So I don't know what's going to happen in years, but I think that life will continue to be more convenient. So
What's challenging about AI to me is if I ask Zach a question and he hedges and he sort of, I think blah, 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 then I can kind of tell whether or not that is a good answer. But if you ask AI something with great confidence, it will give you the wrong information 100%. And you can go back in and say, I know that's the wrong information that you just gave me. It'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. You're absolutely right. So you just have to be really careful at this point, how you use what you ask for, how you interpret it, don't take it, 100%. It is very interesting to see where I'm really grateful. I don't know about you, but I'm really grateful that I was born at a time where I could have experienced absolutely no phones. We had phones on the wall. No, we had to call people from our kitchen. We didn't have, we had maps like you alluded to a while ago, and we got to be part of plugging in that first little Mac computer and, experimenting with all this stuff, having great big cell phones and, how it affected all of the industries that we got to work in. So to me, it's been a fascinating era to be alive.
absolutely, absolutely. I think, of course, I suspect that every generation is going to say the same thing, Scott. But I think that, yeah, they don't. Listen, the closest that I came to, we went to Havana a couple of years ago, and they're still a little behind when it comes down to internet, Wi-Fi, all of that. And of course, it's kind of like being addicted to something at the beginning, but within the second, third days, it was really great because you didn't have all of that spontaneity that you have to kind of respond to text, all of that stuff that goes along with that. Um,
Well, think about how many generations people lived a lot like their parents had. They farmed, they lived in a rural community and so our lives are very different than our parents, and I'm sure our children's lives are going to be very different. But that brings me to another question. Living in a rural community, you could live anywhere you wanted to. You could run your business from Nashville, from Atlanta, from San Diego. What makes you pick Martin, Tennessee as a place to run your business, and what is the differences that you see between your peers who are running businesses in other cities, major metropolitan cities?
Listen, we love this community. That's the bottom line. That's as simple as I can put it together. It's the people that are here. I do remember, again, the impression that I told you earlier being here, but the kind, nice people that first of all are open enough to accept me and my family. That's something that, it's not very easy to do. Are you missing some fancy meals every once in a while? I'm lucky enough that we can actually travel. So that's actually a part of the deal. So my wife retired last year, and I had kind of told her that I would slow down. It's one of those situations where you open your mouth and later on say, like, why did I say that? So
Yeah,
you
you're
start,
a lot like me. Yeah, I say I'm gonna slow down a lot.
yeah, yeah. So then you say, start negotiating. So a part of the deal that we have right now is we travel quite often. I mean, I'm going to say a couple of months we were in Cabo with some friends. A couple of weeks ago we were in Iceland. When you guys were having 99 degrees over here, I was on a snowmobile on the largest glacier in Europe, in Iceland. Loved that place. They said that it's 21 hours of light and then 3 hours of night, and really never got dark there. So
Yeah, I'm
next,
going to ask you about travel after the break, but before we go to the break, I want you to talk a little bit about the Reed Center because I know that's something that's very important to you and one of the ways in which you give back. And so tell us about the Reed Center.
the Reed Center is an incubation hub. It's where essentially entrepreneurs or people who are needed in our society can go in and have a break. It's a subsidized format of encouraging people to, take risks and mitigate the life savings, etc. So um, that's a wonderful idea, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to grow and support that.
We're going to take a break. When we get back, we're going to talk about travel.
Awesome.
ATA is a nationally ranked advisory, tax, and accounting firm with 16 offices across Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Mississippi. ATA serves clients of all sizes, from family-owned businesses to international corporations offering comprehensive services. To learn more, visit their website at ata.net.
I hope you're enjoying the Real Foot Forward podcast from Discovery Park of America. If you are, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our guest today is Dr. Nassar Nassar, and we've been talking all about business and the future, and now we're going to talk about travel, which is near and dear to both our hearts. You moved here, you learned English, you worked your heart out, you obtained a level of success. Uh, at what point did you start traveling and enjoying what other countries had to offer?
I think travel came natural to me. I mean, I don't think that I waited. I was lucky enough. I'd like to think that I was smart enough to know that we needed to continue to travel and learn because we are a global community. And anything that happens anywhere around the world does affect us to varying degrees, of course. So, continuing to actually be able to travel and see how other people think and live has always been a critical component of who I am and what I like to do. Um, but just like what we talked about earlier, I started doing a little more travel when I could afford a little more, quite honestly. And when, you know, the kids were uh, gone, graduated college and everything else in there, at least high school. And that's not going to stop. I mean, I can't see myself being able to just stay in one place. I love Martin again, but I think if I didn't have the chance to be able to travel, I would not be as happy. That's for sure. I
Where
don't know.
where did you go when your kids were little? Where was you and your wife's favorite vacation spot?
Well, I'll tell you, we were smart enough, good enough that our kid. We don't have any family around here, Scott. So when during Christmas, what we would do is we would take a couple of weeks at the end of the year, and then take all three kids and go pretty much anywhere that we could within reason. So I remember one time we went to the West Coast, L.A., Vegas, San Diego, in that area. One year we went to Hawaii. We actually went to Hawaii about two, three times. Puerto Rico and in different parts. I'm proud to say that my kids have traveled pretty much five continents by the time that they were 5 years
What
old.
difference do you think that makes in the way they approach problem solving and the world in general.
I think it keeps them open. I mean, again, going back to at the core of everything that's wrong. I mean, we miscommunicate with people. I mean, I traveled around the world and met all kinds of different people. We're the same, Scott. We are the same. Speak different languages, look different, behave differently, but at the core of it, if you're around different people and you see that they are normal, then you're less likely to stereotype. You're less likely to really limit yourself from learning and really capitalizing on how other people do it. And that's something that's very important, I think. So
Even to me, even if people can just travel, if you can't afford to go to somewhere far away, just go somewhere nearby. Travel to me is the key to developing a well-rounded kid. I know people that homeschool and they really do that so that they can spend more time traveling around the world. Both my girls have traveled and it makes a huge difference in the way they approach life, I think.
absolutely. I mean, our daughter, when she graduated, she wanted to go to Europe. She took her mom. She didn't ask me to go. She made me take her to Canada a week before there, but she went on a cruise and then went to Spain, all kinds of different countries. I do remember us going to Van Gogh when she was like 12 or 13, and spending a night in Rome and here and there. It's she takes it for granted, but it's critically important because she sees the world as it is. I mean, to varying degrees, again, anything that happens anywhere does affect us. So
If you had 2 weeks, unlimited resources, where would you go?
tough, very, very tough. Um, I'll tell you something that we started doing. I don't, you know that I got my pilot's license. I want to say about 6, 7 years ago.
Hmm.
So I remember, coming home, proud of my pilot's license after my son essentially got his. So the original idea was I just needed to learn enough to make sure that he doesn't do anything crazy, so I know how to operate an airplane. But I fell in love with that, and got my pilot's license. I got my plane. So I remember after I got my pilot's license, coming home and say, "Hey, listen, honey, there are 67 airports in the great state of Tennessee. What do you think about just kind of trying to fly into at least, or all of them at least, once?" And she said, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's not bad." And I go, "What's it's not bad. I was kind of hoping for a little more excitement than would be better." She said, "Well, we could fly into at least one airport in every state."
Hmm.
And I'm going, darn it. I didn't guess at the time, but I thought that was cool. So we've kind of been doing that for the last 3 years.
Hmm.
I think that I'm happy to report we're 37 out of 50.
Wow, that's great.
Last year we took a cruise to Alaska, and I managed to rent an airplane and take off and kind of circle a mountain and come back and land. And then Hawaii did the same thing around Christmas time. Um, 2 weeks is going to be tough for me to just say one thing. So I have 13 more states that hopefully, if I would say that the very first thing that I would do after the 2 weeks, in the first 2 weeks, would probably finish my Western expedition, I would call it, kind of go down from hit Texas and come around North Dakota. That will cover the 50 out of 50. We got lucky last year. We went to spend Christmas week in Hawaii with the kids, but when they came home, we went to Australia, New Zealand, and when we were in New Zealand, we kind of thought that, hey, we're halfway around the world, so instead of coming back to LA, we took a flight to Doha, Qatar, spent 3, 4 days there, and then came back to Chicago. So I am here to assure you, Scott and Zach, that Earth is round, and if you keep going west, you will come back around. Maybe next time I'll have a little more time than that, and then maybe try to go around the world the other way. So,
Okay, last question. What is your favorite restaurant in Martin?
Crave.
Okay, tell us a little bit
Good
about
one.
Crave.
I have to say, Crave, man, it's my beautiful son. He had a great idea. He experimented on me and a bunch of other people. So he wanted, listen, honestly, he wanted to be in the restaurant business pretty much all of his life. But I made him go to college. I made him work in the corporate world, so to speak, so he can actually check those boxes. But a few years ago, he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I'm done with this stuff in here. I want to build a restaurant. You told me you would help me with that stuff." And I said, "Okay, great. Then you have to be professionally certified." So he ended up going to Dubai for a few months and got a lot of people don't know that about him, but he is a certified chef from one of the top schools in Dubai, and then came back to Nashville and kept figuring out exactly what he wants to do when he grew up, and then put this wonderful menu together. And I'm happy to report that I think he's going to open up a new restaurant in Paris, Tennessee. And I'm going to continue to encourage him to do this. So Crave has look good tasting food that's healthy for you. I mean, you can't ask for better than that. So,
And we're pushing him to open one in Union City as well. So
yeah, I'm
um,
trying. I promise you.
yeah, hopefully that will happen. Thank you so much. We're going to put the link to Savant Learning Systems and the Read Center and Crave, and a link to our podcast with your son, all in the show notes, so that people can go there to find all the information. We appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Absolutely. If I may make one point uh,
Sure.
that I really feel like I need to.
Yeah, please do.
Virtual Academy is a service company that was built on the fact that I discovered after we started doing some training initially. Uh, Look, I've been around the world. We have what I would call almost unrealistic expectations of our public safety, police officers, sheriff deputies, and so on. We expect them to be familiar with all laws to the degree that they have a law degree without sending them to school to do that. We expect them to be super communicators, medical experts, counselors, ninjas without black belt training, and so on. And we don't pay them that much. So Virtual Academy was built on the idea that they deserve more. I think that in the medical field, 45 to 90,000 folks die a year because of malpractice. None of my friends hopefully get mad at me for saying that, but less than 1% of 1,000 deaths that are caused by law enforcement a year in the big 300 million country, beautiful country that we're in, is well, can be questionable. So we just gotta hopefully recognize and appreciate them a little more than we typically do. They're not perfect, nobody is, but I promise you, and Scott, I think you could definitely back me up on this. Listen, we've been around the world, and we know what not having sufficient, tough, smart, competent public safety professionals can do to a country.
Mm-hmm.
So, shout out to all these guys. We appreciate everything that you do day in and day out.
Amen. That was great. Great way to end it. Thank you. And thank you to all our listeners who've joined us today at Discovery Park of America. Shout out to our friends over at ATA for sponsoring today's episode. Our mission here is to inspire children and adults to see beyond. To plan an experience here for you and your family, visit discoveryparkofamerica.com.